Oh, here we go. Thanks for your patience. Every time I think it's ready, it's like, hello, you have to do one more thing.
It's on YouTube. Which is a good idea.
All right. Let's start.
Okay, started.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so let's just start off with you guys introducing yourselves. And I just want to say real quick, thank you guys so much for coming. We're just so excited to have you here in Iowa City. And yeah, we hope that we're gonna have a good night.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I'm KYRUH. I'm from Brooklyn, New York, based out of Brooklyn, New York.
I'm Anthony. I'm from New York, from Westchester, New York, based out of Brooklyn now as well. DJ, producer. Yeah.
Well, why don't we talk a little bit about what you're into right now, just on a broad scale, like what sort of groups you're a part of. Sorry.
Okay, so for me, I Love Acid is the sister label of Balkan Vinyl out in the UK, and my good friend Posthuman runs it, and he's been doing this for a long time. So Balkan Vinyl, I Love Acid, Sorry Records, run by my other good friend Nick Boyd, based out of New York City. I would say those are like the three main ones that have like shown me so much love and just given me so many opportunities. Strictly just by like reaching out to me, being like, listen, you want to do this? Or like, listen, I love this song. Yeah, so it's been wonderful. I love those guys. Those are my people.
Yeah, ditto to his people. They're all really great. And yeah, so Anthony has released a lot of sort of productions with those folks, and I am not a producer. I only DJ. So I don't necessarily affiliate with any collective specifically. I mostly work with individuals in the scene, the clubs in the scene in Brooklyn, and most recently and beyond. And so a lot of the people who are backing me and supporting me are just sort of these individual bookers and promoters who really sort of want to bring that underground scene of New York City to sort of the mainstream and the forefront. Specifically, some of my favorite places are Basement, New York, working with Elsewhere, and nowadays it's all just sort of clubs in New York. And yeah, I have just a lot of individual support that has sort of made this very possible as opposed to collectives. One of my favorite collectives though in New York City is She They DJ. It is a collective that puts on sort of femme, non-binary, trans women, DJs, and producers on different lineups throughout the city, and they've really stuck to that mission from beginning to end, which is super cool. It's very similar to Femdex in a lot of ways. And yeah, it's just a lot of individual support for how I was able to sort of come into this music industry the way that I did.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, so I just wanted to see sort of how you got into the fields that you're in now and like your sort of musical journey. From when you first started really getting interested in listening to music and also like, you know, curating music and sharing music, and how that's led to where you are now.
We should start.
Yeah, we can start.
I think you should start it. Your journeys both of our journeys are interesting, but you lead.
Yeah.
This one.
Okay. So I've been making music since like 2010. It's been a very long time. I started in 7th or 8th grade. I used to tell people 2012, but I recently found a photo of me producing, and my mom put like my dog that I had at the time on my back. So there's a photo of me like producing with my dog on my back. And the timestamp says 2010. I was like, oh shit. It's been a lot longer than I thought. But yeah, so I've been making music for that long, specifically electronic music, but I've always been playing guitar. I used to heavily play the saxophone. I used to enter in like competitions and stuff like that. Specifically, there was like a New York State music competition that I used to do every single year. Yeah, and then I just kind of grew up with it. And as I got a little bit older, and electronic music has always been important, but as I kind of was discovering it, I found myself more and more attracted to it, and I started producing. Originally, it was supposed to be me and my friend, but he like made me get the production stuff and made me keep it at my house, so I was the one using it all the time. So I was just like, yeah, like, you know, why not just keep with this? And I eventually was making just kind of like hip hop beats and stuff like that, kind of like what people would call now like lo-fi music to chill and fall asleep to 24/7 kind of music. And then I discovered like different styles of electronic music through like honestly just listening to like old school radio and hearing like some house tracks and stuff like that. And then also some of the newer stuff, I find myself attracted to like Björk, Aphex Twin, all those sort of people, very like left field sort of stuff. And so I kind of pivoted towards that sound. Then somewhere in between, I got really involved in SoundCloud and the scene on SoundCloud and just releasing music on SoundCloud. And like, at this time, it must have been like 2012, 2013. And there was a really big community on SoundCloud, specifically in the trap music and underground rap music. And people would just comment on each other's tracks. Like everyone had a Twitter. We would all like talk on Twitter. Like most of us have never even met. Like, but it was just like this really big scene. There's a lot of camaraderie. And through that, I feel like is when I started to see some like success, sort of. Like I got picked up by like a couple publications, like Pigeons and Planes back in the day. And then this rapper Bones, I forget where he's from. I think it's from like, I don't know, I'm not gonna get it wrong. But he was like really like the top of the underground scene at the time. And he like found one of my tracks and used it to rap on. And then I started to see, even to this day, and it's been years, to this day, on my SoundCloud, like most of the likes are from the tracks that I've done with this particular person. Like one of them just hit 1 million plays the other day too. Really insane stuff. But then I kind of found myself getting disillusioned with with working with those underground rappers. I'm not gonna name names, but like I don't know. I found myself like not making the money that I thought I should make. Found myself kind of getting screwed over a little bit, kind of slighted. As most of the producers, like a lot of my friends can attest to this. So I kind of, again, got disillusioned. I got kind of bored. And at the same time, I was just started college at University of New Haven. And they ended up kicking me out because I wasn't going to class. I was just making music in my dorm room and watching movies. And so they ended up kicking me out. I moved back home. At this time, I was really, like, I thought I was done with music. I was like, it doesn't seem like anything was going anywhere. There's not really there's no push forward. And I just wasn't having fun anymore. So I like told myself that I would quit. And then I kind of pivoted towards film. And I went to school for film for a little while. But obviously, like, you can't, I don't know, once you get bit by like the music club, you can't actually quit. Like there's no way. Like it's just not possible. So I obviously was slowly, creepily getting back into music and like started making stuff. And actually was making like, I guess like house music and techno music. To this day, none of those tracks have come out. I have like 2 EPs of all of these old tracks that I made back then. I didn't release any of it, but it was fun getting to rediscover what I loved about making music. And like, even though I wasn't showing it to anybody, I was like, yeah, it's cool. Like I would just go to my friend's studio and like play them for them. And like, they'd be like, yeah, it's dope. Like, you're gonna release something. No, absolutely not. Like this is strictly for me. So I got back into music. I started playing little shows here and there. Then honestly the pandemic hit. Somewhere in between there too, me and Kyra like reconnected because we've known each other for a long time. And we stopped talking for a little while and then we reconnected. And she went to one of my shows. And then afterwards, I was playing like rap and trap music. And afterwards we were talking about like techno. And she's like, oh, have you ever thought about like DJing techno? And I was like, like I've listened to techno before, but like I don't even really know. Like I was like, I haven't like expanded my mind to these possibilities yet. So that like planted a seed in my head. And then the pandemic hit, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna like got all this unemployment money. I was like, I'm gonna buy some synths. I've been listening to a lot of techno, a lot of acid, and I was like, I'm gonna try, try my hand at it. And then the rest just kind of snowballed. And that's like during the pandemic is when I started putting out my 3 acid EPs, acid EP volume 1, 2, and 3, and then. I don't know, people just started getting interested in it, and I found myself getting more and more attention. And then eventually, my friend Post-Human from London reached out and he was like, "Oh, do you want to do like a vinyl for us?" And the release was vinyl only, like it's no digital, no nothing, and it sold out within the first like 10 minutes, something like that. Yeah, it was kind of insane. Limited to an edition of 303 copies, but it sold out like in the first like 10 minutes. I think even shorter, but I don't want to get it wrong. But yeah, and then he invited me back, and I just finished up the EP, and I actually finished a year ago, and it just came out last month. So, and it's been great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's backtrack a little bit in your timeline, and just want to hear some tracks from you that have inspired you on your journey from the beginning till now.
Okay. Yeah.
You can start wherever, and then I just kind of want to hear from you and see how the track has influenced you.
All right. I'm gonna start with a classic. Love Fire. Yeah. The iconic So I can't tell you the first time I heard it. It's kind of one of those tracks that like you hear it and you're just like, yes, this is this song. Like it's been in my head forever. It's like one of those songs that like you almost feel like you're just born with the knowledge of it. I don't know. You just hear like you hear it out and it's just a wonderful song. And that synth line is like that synth line has stuck with me for the longest time. I love hearing it. I love hearing different interpretations of it. Like just anywhere I hear it, even if it's like in someone else's remix or something like that, I'm just like, yes, like you got a banger. Like you took it from this and it still holds up. Like just that one synth line, absolutely insane. And then obviously like the house beats, it's phenomenal. Robin S is amazing. Yeah, I really don't know when first time I heard it. It's just always been there with me. And I remember when I was going to a lot of shows. I had a little EDM phase at one point, but I was going to a lot of shows, yeah. And I remember there's a Laid Back Luke remix of this song. And like I don't care about how people feel like EDM or whatever, but like that remix is actually really good. And I remember just like hearing that the synth line, and I was just like, oh, like I'm pretty sure I've heard this before, you know? Yeah, I know I've like heard this. It's a massive synth line. And then I kind of like rediscovered this track because I was like, oh yeah, that's right, like Robin S. Show Me Love. Yeah, so it's just phenomenal. I love this song.
Awesome.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's a great song.
Yeah.
Well, I'd love to hear more tracks that are inspirational to you, but I also want to hear a song from your new album.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
Love Acid. So you can. Yeah.
Yeah, there's like a couple I could pick. I could pick my favorite.
It's totally up to
I don't know, I enjoy them all. I'm gonna play this one. Oh no, I don't know.
you.
I'm gonna do this one like this. I love this one.
Kind of how you approach the production process.
So my production process has like really changed throughout the years. I used to start with melody first. And the melodies I used to make were like really, they were like really involved. I don't know. I want to say complex, but like they were complex in the way I was constructing them. But like listening back to them, I don't think they were that like crazy. Anyway, I used to start with melody, but now and then do drums last. But now I start with the drums, like lay down a beat, and then I'll do some vocals. What I'll do is I get my phone out and then I type something up while I'm listening to the beat or something that I would want to like repeat over and over again, and just something that I can play with that has like interesting voice textures to it or something like that. I don't even really need to be saying anything. Like this track is literally just called I don't even know what I'm talking about, but what I'll do is I'll record it on my phone into the recording app, and then I'll just throw it on the computer and clean up the vocals a little bit, throw it in and chop it up and see what I can do with my vocals. And I usually pitch them down. Sometimes I pitch them up, but yeah, it's a lot of fun to be playing around with that. And I was just telling Tyra outside, I was like, it's so funny. I just remembered that I used to hate my voice. Like I used to hear it on recordings and just be like, ew, like why do I sound like that? Like, this sucks. And now I'm like throwing it in my songs whenever it fits, like whenever I can. And I'm just like, and I'm loving it. And I love hearing it out. I'm just like, yes, there we go. But yeah, so I'll do that, and then I'll like, depending on what I'm doing, I'll like sit on the track for like a couple days, maybe I'll listen to it everywhere, and like kind of think about different things that I can do to make it pop more, and how I can make it like engaging with the audience. And I've taken like a pretty simple approach to my productions right now. Just because like listening to old techno and old house, some of those productions are like incredibly simple, so incredibly simplistic, but so impactful. And I say this all the time, but like it's really, really hard to make a song with so few elements go so incredibly hard. And I think techno and house, there are exceptions, but techno and house are like, and electro as well, are like beautiful examples of how you can have like 4 things going on at once and have it be the most insane thing and want to shake your body all over the place. So I love that. And I love taking that approach, that kind of like back to basics approach. And the same thing with the vocals. A lot of like old techno and electro, a lot of the producers are just putting their voices on it. They don't even care how it sounds. Like sometimes it's the worst recorded vocal ever, and it elevates the track somehow. Like it gives you that like dusty, industrial, like warehouse sort of feeling. So I love that shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, how does your DJing practice play into your production?
Well,
How do they work together?
So I started producing before I would say that I got serious into DJing. I guess the way it impacts it is like, I'll do like, I'll make like the intros kind of long. I love long intros. I've always loved long intros. And it's really good for that to like mix in to a track, and then make the chunk of the track like, kind of build up, get like maximalized a little bit, and then like come back down. Kind of like a roller coaster. I'm sure a lot of people take an approach to that, but that's how it informs like the way I DJ. I'm like, oh, I would love to hear this out or play this out. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so I was thinking maybe if you wanted to play a track that you're super into right now, or play an artist or a DJ that you're really interested in or inspired by currently.
So I'm gonna play. I've been listening to a lot of different stuff. I'm gonna go with so someone I've always been inspired by is Arthur Russell. Like just his output and everything. Is he from Iowa? I'm pretty sure he's
Yes.
from Iowa. Yeah, he is from Iowa, right? Yeah. Yeah, he is.
Yeah, he used to go to high school in Iowa City.
Yeah, fantastic. I love him so much. He's just amazing. I just love his music. I love his voice. I love his like input. And he used to do a lot of disco stuff as well. Like he disco out in New York with like Dinosaur L and all these different things. And recently my friend was showing me a lot of these different tracks that have Arthur playing cello in them. Like even just for like, and these are like really old disco tracks, and like even just for like a short section of like a 7-minute song, you'll just hear like Arthur Russell's cello just like chiming in the back somewhere, and it's unmistakable. You're just like, that's Arthur, there he is, man. It's amazing. And I just love his output, and he was trying all these different sort of things. I'm gonna play more of like, this is a more popular song, but I don't know, I just love him so much. And he does like everything. It's insane. But this track I love, make one too. Absolutely fantastic. I could listen to him for hours. I've listened to so much of his stuff, and I guess his output when he was alive really wasn't that big. It's only after he died, and I guess his partner and maybe his family just found like hundreds and hundreds of recordings that he had made, just like trying out different styles, different things. And so far from what we've heard, and they release them pretty, I wouldn't say regularly, but they release them still. And everything is phenomenal, and it's all different stuff. And he can get like incredibly experimental electronic with stuff. Like I've heard some stuff that's like really just some really insane like dance music stuff. And then next thing you know, we'll have like a country song as the next track. And it's phenomenal. It's amazing. And it all slaps. It's all incredible. And his voice, like his tenor, I don't know, it's just amazing. I don't know anyone else who sings like him. I heard, I saw someone describe it as like a Muppet tenor. And it really does. It sounds like Kermit the Frog like singing or something. And just everything he has is so like nostalgic, like his voice and his life is incredibly interesting. And I always I say this a lot, but like sometimes I'll like be walking through New York and I'll be like, Arthur Russell, like used to live here. Like especially like walking down St. Mark Street, I'm like, Arthur Russell used to like chill over here. And there's also a really good remix that he made of this track. It's like Make One Two Gem Spa dub. It's really good. And Gem Spa was the name of I guess you'd call it like a bodega or like just a storefront it was at the top of St. Mark Street. It's gone now, but they only got rid of it like kind of recently. So even when I was like hanging out on St. Mark Street a lot, Gem Spa was still there, and I was like, cool. Like Arthur Russell used to hang out here and get ice cream and shit. Yeah. But yeah, it's fantastic.
Awesome.
yeah.
Well, yeah, I feel like we could talk for hours and hours, and I'd love to hear so many more of your tracks. But I feel like we have to move on. So I would like to hear now from you about the same sort of questions about like, you know, how you got into music, where that started, and kind of that journey until now.
Yeah, it's like an interesting journey because I think like Anthony came from this perspective of like wanting to work with music, sort of create it. And I came from this sort of dancer perspective. Like when I was growing up, I did ballet. I was always just sort of in different groups in school. So like the hip hop dance group in middle school and high school and college. And I just always loved dancing and music moving me in that way. And I was a very, very shy child. And the only time I wasn't shy was if there was like a school dance. And then I would just be dancing and I'd have fun and I didn't really care who was sort of watching me. And I had a really sort of tumultuous, like chaotic childhood. And so I really have sort of this really escapist mentality, or especially when I was younger. And so I'd escape in so many different ways. It was very, very bookish kid, be reading all the time and block things out. Dancing in my room was a big part of it. And so that was sort of where the love of music sort of started. It was sort of an escape from reality, and my reality was being a good noodle. I was in a very overprotective household. I didn't have a lot of freedom, high control home. And so to escape those things, dancing was a big part of it. And so I didn't have any sort of intention to do anything with it. It was just sort of a thing I would do to escape sort of real world. I didn't connect that as sort of being real world. And so that's sort of where the love of it came. As I got older, I was still dancing. When I was in college, there are sort of two big scenes in sort of New York City. There's the electronic music scene, but there's also sort of like where the finance bros hang out. It's like the Lower East Side clubs, and that's where you'll see the button-up t-shirts and you'll see bottle service. And so, you know, me and my friends, when we were in college, we'd have fake IDs and we'd go every weekend. I was still, you know, an honor student, but still very much love. It was just such a place of healing to me to kind of move my body in that way. And so I go to Lower East Side a lot, which was very much R&B, hip hop, rap. And though I love the music, the scene was, A, I was underage, but also B, the scene was not loving, it wasn't friendly, there's a lot of different people in and out, like New York City specifically in Manhattan, there are people coming and going all the time, there wasn't necessarily any community. And so by the end of college, even though I loved to have those weekends to kind of get out of this very huge routine that I had in college, it was just sort of getting to the point when I was 21, or almost 21, or I was about to graduate, where I was like, I can't go out in the scene anymore, because I didn't know what else there was out there. Even though I wasn't eclectic for music I listened to, I was still, there was like a high control situation when I was a kid, so I didn't really know that what was out there. I think I took the train for the first time in New York City alone when I went to college. So I didn't really have a good gauge on what was happening in the world or what scenes there were. Like there's DIY, there's underground. I didn't know any of that. When I was graduating college, I was like, you know, if this is the scene, because I also thought Manhattan was everything. If this is the scene, I don't want any part of it. There are guys trying to touch me and grab me, and it's not worth it anymore. And so I was just about done with it. And then right as we graduated, me and my two friends, we said, you know, let's treat ourselves, let's go out of the country. And so we went to, like, we did what I think a lot of people do sometimes, but we did like London, Berlin, and Amsterdam, and we did a few days in each. And I was just so blown away, not only by the music. Oh, and also right before that, I was also in like the EDM scene as well. Like I was going to like dubstep parties, but even that, it was still, there's not a lot of groove to that music. So I liked it, the people were a little better, there was a little more community, but the music I was still kind of half in, half out. And then there was a lot of drug use too that I necessarily wasn't into. Drug use in the way that the party was for the drugs, from my experience. And so that kind of wasn't like the end. So then after college, we went to abroad, and there's such like a robust house and techno music scene there. And not only did the music blow me away, because I've heard some of this stuff before, you know, online and SoundCloud and stuff, but it wasn't the music that just blew me away, which hit so hard on just this soulful level. It was the way in which most people interacted with each other. Of course, not every scene is perfect, but the interactions there were a lot more loving, a lot more respectful, a lot more, we're here to dance. We're not here to try and hook up with you, even if that can happen with this intimate space. But we're here for the music. We're here for the party. We're here for the rave. We dance. We dance like no one's watching. We dance not facing the DJ. We dance and we turn around and we're up and down and we're jumping up and down. And I really vibed with that so heavy, and it was just such an inspirational trip. I came back to New York and I was like, what the fuck? I need to find this. I gotta find it in Brooklyn. I have to find it. It wasn't that hard, but yeah. I just didn't know about it. But I was just like, I need to go find the scene, because the love that I felt there, just this openness, and just this sort of authentic realness in your body and in the space, and just kind of felt really human. I said, I gotta find that here. And so I found the scene here at a lot of the clubs, all the clubs we play at now. never would have imagined playing at them. And I found the scene here and thoroughly enjoyed it, made friends. I'd even go out alone. I would go out alone all the time and just go dance for hours and hours and hours. And it was so healing, especially because I still was dealing with this sort of like childhood trauma. And it was, as the older I got, the more it was coming up. So in ways and just kind of coming up into my relationship. So it was even more of a healing place to kind of just go alone. I don't have to speak to anyone if I don't want to. I could just sort of be. And that was awesome. And then eventually, just after a while, there was a specific sound I was looking for that I didn't necessarily find. I'm not saying it wasn't there, just wasn't exactly the sound I was looking for. A little bit harder, a little bit rougher, a little more industrial. There were places, Basement, a club that I get to play now. Reporter was, oh my God, love that place. That was a place I go to and see a lot of big acts like Randomer, Henning Bear, Anthony Parasol, LD, a lot of just old heads, new heads who were all playing there, and they were really hard techno. But outside of that club, I didn't find it a lot. And so I eventually sort of said, maybe I could contribute something one day. I didn't necessarily think it would be anything, but I got like a little mixer. It had to be this small, and I was sort of doing it in my room for a year, 2 years, and not really thinking anything about it, but just sort of practicing. We reconnected around that time, and I was explaining, oh my God, do you know what techno is? And so it's community, and so it's love. And so around that time we connected a little bit, and I just sort of practiced a lot. And what sort of like kicked it into overdrive was when the dance floors closed for COVID. That was just outright devastating. It was just devastating because it was the only place I didn't feel like an alien. There wasn't, I had a day job, I come from these two different worlds of just being very bookish and coming, not only bookish, but coming from this place of helping people. I've, studied neuroscience, psychology, public health. I've always worked in mission work, working with underprivileged youth, or working with sex trafficked youth, or working with undocumented or juvenile justice youth. And and then there's that part of me, but then no one saw this other side of me that could just be free. And then when the dance floors closed, that was just the most devastating thing to me. I didn't even know what to do with myself. It was really sad. And then dealing with my child that kicked in the overdrive because they had nothing to do. And so the beginning of the pandemic was, for a lot of people, was just so hard. And because I couldn't go out to dance, and I would even go on those, they try to get these like online raves going where you can zoom in and dance with people. Wasn't the same, of course, but I love trying. A lot of those things were donation based. They would donate it to different organizations. The money came in, and that's when I started DJing more. But it wasn't even to do it live. It was the only thing I sort of had to just kind of mix in my room and to kind of do something with this dance music that I can't go dance to anymore. And a lot of that pent up rage I threw in the mixes. It was really hard. They were fast, and I just threw it in the music. And I just tell everybody that something resonated. Around eventually right before people got vaccinated, there were like the kind of like unvaccinated raves. And so I did start meeting people right towards the end when things were about to open up. But just online, I just would post like mixes on SoundCloud, and since no one was out, everybody was listening to them, and it just I got a huge fan base before I even played a show live, really. And just based off of what I was feeling, and I think that's what I try to do with my music to this day when I perform, is I go into every show with an intention. And the intention can simply be, look at the audience and see what they're feeling, or the intention could be, just authentically, whatever you're feeling this week, just like throw it in there. And I think there's something about that that's resonated with people, and also kind of watching the journey, because I've just been doing it in front of people from the pandemic on. Just I have a lot of just diehard friends, and I've made so many friends, just like love our friends. Just they support us so much, not only because of our music, not only because of just like our personalities and our way of just genuinely loving them, but also, you know, it's just kind of all those things combined, and really just believed in us from the jump. And I don't think none of this would have happened if they weren't during the pandemic reposting and saying, it's just everywhere was just like KYRUH mixes. And so by the time the dance floors reopened, I was just getting booked out, because just there was so much support from just sort of Brooklyn ravers who liked what I was doing in those little parties, those little house parties. People were playing my mixes. I'd pull up to a house party, my mix was on. Like, and you like it? Love it, we love it. And then I just sort of advocated for myself a lot. I caught the bug after I started doing shows. Like you said, you caught the bug, you can't get away from it. And I caught the bug. I loved not only just performing the music and the music, I loved being in the scene, I loved being around the people. And I love performing a lot. I really didn't know, as someone who grew up really shy, it is the only kind of space I can feel like myself on stage. Because it's great, like it's nice to rave with people, but when you're the DJ, you just kind of rave alone for a couple hours, which is also really, you don't gotta talk to nobody if you don't wanna. It's like, it's really great if you're introverted in some ways. And so that was like sort of a lot of it. And now it's just sort of running with it. Because it just kind of soulfully satiates me a lot. I quit my day job. I do work in a club now, but I quit my day job because it was just sort of this duality of people not understanding how deep this runs. And I think sometimes people think the scene, there are a lot of DJs who don't necessarily understand the roots of the music, don't understand the implication they have as sort of a virus of the culture, because people do look to you as a DJ. You're the party orchestrator. People don't understand, not everybody, but some don't understand the value and the weight of that. And I take that so seriously. It's so serious for me, just being not only a good performer, a good musician, but also sort of a beacon of light and goodness, and carving out a scene sort of made of more joy and more love than it was ever before. And I try and make that bleed in through the music as much as possible, and not take those things. Some things are really deep for me, like that is really deep, and then other things are not really deep. This was fun. This is healing. This is fun stuff. Sometimes techno, the electronic music scene can be a little stoic, can be a little, who's cool? Who are you? What are you doing? How are you dancing? And I just like to keep those things light, keep those things serious, not so serious, and keep those things sort of open for whatever happens. Yeah, and I guess that's what happens.
Yeah.
Now we're here.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for sharing all of that. I feel like you guys have had a really strong influence on each other as artists, which is really cool.
Yeah, it's super dope. I remember the one time, the first time we mixed together. Do you remember when you came to my house in Harlem?
I was coming back from my parents' place. I just come back from Sweden, where I was also listening to a lot of techno music, and we were just like, yeah, let's
go. And then like we stayed in my house for like 6 hours, just like having fun.
Yeah, it was fun.
So it was just so fun, and that was kind of sort of the start of our B2Bs. It just kind of was fun. It wasn't sort of an intentional thing. It was just fun. It still is very fun,
We had a show booked too, but then the pandemic hit right after we were like chilling and doing all that stuff.
I remember the pandemic hit the day of our first show together, and Anthony's calling me, "The show, it's canceled," and I was like, "No, it's not. What's a COVID? Like, we're doing it, and we can't do it." And so yeah.
I do want to hear more about your B2B process, but before we talk about that, let's go back a little bit. And I want to hear some tracks from you that have inspired you and sort of, propelled you in this DJing journey.
It's very interesting, sort of like when you're like coming up in front of people because it's just every month, every couple months, like my sound is becoming a little more refined, a little different. You know, like what I was playing in the dance floors reopened, what I was known for, just being like the hardcore raver, you know, fast, boom, 150 out the gate, you know, going hard. Sometimes I'm like, I can't even get there anymore. I'm not a fan. And so it's really interesting. But I do like tracks that sort of have tension. I think a lot of my life has been sort of like tension, duality. I'm gonna start this track from just like the middle because I'll just play it first. But it's called Suddenly Funk by Renato Cohen. And when I first came back from New York, from that like Euro trip, I was heavy just getting into this music and educating myself on what the scene was like. And I just found this track and it always stuck for me. And I was always waiting for the one day I could play it out live. And it's really fun.
What is the first one?
Very fun.
Yeah, it's called Suddenly Funk.
Yeah.
It's like a super sick track. When I heard it, I was like, because we make a distinction now between techno and house, but back in the day it was just called house, all of it, electronic music. And even now, since there's like social media, you kind of to get bookings, you kind of have to a little like brand one way or the other, so people make sense what to do with you and what lineups to put you on. But I really like this track because it's really this like heavy repetitiveness, and then it goes into this really funky, party. It's a really cool opening track. I believe, and there's something about like repetitiveness and like duration in like techno and house music that it's really cool. Like when you work with like kids with trauma or people who have trauma, something they suggest to make them feel comfortable is they need routine and they need continuity and they need sort of repetitiveness. So, things don't become jarring for them. Things need to be predictable. And there's something about techno and house that's always predictable, even if it's interesting, it's a complex track, a cool track. The timelessness of it is that there's a predictableness to it. It's always in 4 count for the most part. There's always these drops, and it's like, and you're hearing the same thing over and over and over again a lot of ways, and maybe there's like a layer on it, but there's something really comforting in that, and that's what I find really beautiful about the genre.
Yeah, that is a really interesting insight that I'm glad you brought up. Just thought about it.
That like parallel, because I was thinking like, why is the repetitiveness? Like, your songs are timeless. Like, those songs are like emulate, old heads love them. Like, it's timeless and it kind of spans through culture and time, and like a lot of music does. And I think there is something about that repetitiveness that is comforting, and I remember like being in the raves, just like knowing, I was like, I know when the job's gonna happen. And there's something like cool about that. Like, I know when I'm gonna move this way now. And there's something really cool about that,
Yeah, well, I'd love to hear a couple more tracks if you want to play them. If you have any in mind that you want to share.
This is a fun one. It's by Paranoid London. It's called Eating Glue. I've actually never played this track live, but I play this track probably once a week because I adore it. It's really fun. Like this bass line is just, oh my God, it's like just that driving bass.
I can feel it straight in my toes, all the way up out through my nose. And they look good, and they feel good. You walk wet, you move wet. I can feel it in my bones.
Really good track.
Oh, this track has my heart. It's my favorite track. I haven't dropped it live because I don't know what does it justice. There has to be a moment. I think timing is also really important to DJ. And I'm like, no crowd's been ready. I haven't been ready. There will just be the day. There will just be one day. But that vocal is so sick. I'm gonna butcher the guy who does the vocal, so I'm not gonna say it.
It's Josh Caff, right?
But the vocal's sick, the bass line is sick, and like he talks throughout the whole entire song, and I don't know, it just reminds me just like it could go anywhere, like it could, like an after party, yeah.
Coincidentally, these guys are they're also Balkan Vinyl and I Love Acid.
Yeah, because they're London based. This whole EP, I think it's the EP is like self-named.
Yeah.
That whole EP is ridiculously good, and they all go, oh my God, it's really good. Check it out.
Yeah, do you guys want to talk about Madness of a little minute? Or just in general your B2B process and
Yeah.
you know, everything about that. I guess I don't totally know. Is Madness of your new moniker that is your B2B moniker?
Yeah, so I mean, there's been like a soft launch of it because we've been doing the B2Bs for like the past year now, and that just sort of happened. I remember like the first time it sort of happened live, we were on the same lineup. We weren't supposed to do B2B. I was just going first, and then he was going after, and then he's like, "You just want to play together?" Okay. And then like, so I was like, so we just played together, and then oh my God, the club was rocking out, and it was an open decks, like it wasn't even a booking, like it was just like a Wednesday, like any DJs could sign up, and the crowd went crazy. It was so fun. And so what really kind of got the B2Bs in overdrive was like the Her Berlin set, or it's spelled for Berlin, HOR, but we went to Berlin. He actually got the booking for, and I love Her Berlin. They do these YouTube video streams of mostly electronic music artists, but lots of different artists like DJing in this like booth in Berlin. It's really famous, and so he hit them up for a booking, and you know they said no because they were all booked out, and I was just going to Berlin anyway. You had some things going on in Amsterdam and London, like press and things going on in Berlin, and so. But I was just going to Berlin for like shits and giggles. I go ever since I went on that first trip. I just go all the time now, and so or every chance I get. COVID kind of slashed that for a little bit, but every chance I get to get like re-inspired. And I was just going, and then he said, you know, if I get this booking, like I want you to do it with me. And I was like, no, I don't even think if I got that booking, I don't even know if I would have said for you to like come to do it with me. Like I was just the most generous thing ever.
I wanted to do that. It would be
It was sweet. but we didn't, they were like, oh, we're booked out. If someone drops, we'll let you know. And we're in Berlin, he's in London, I was in Berlin, just like hanging. And he calls me and he's like, we got the booking. He's like, someone dropped. And then like, I was in tears. And then we blew that up. It was incredible. Like the video got like, I think in the first like day, like 8,000 streams. And now it's to like almost 17,000 streams. And like, that was what kind of made people book us B2B since then. And that was like in November. So that kind of kicked it into overdrive. We would sometimes do them live, but when I was coming up as an artist, since we're really close friends and he's like paid to play in like production and me being like a woman and a Black woman, when I was like coming up, I was kind of very careful to not do things with him because I didn't want people to think that he was carrying me, and I wanted to, and even outside of that, I wanted to establish my sound and my way without him, like without that influence as much. So I was like very careful in the beginning to like not do too much with Anthony for all of these like societal reasons. But then after a certain point, it's just so fun. Like, why refrain from something that is just quintessentially like we've known each other since we were like 15 or 16. Like, why refrain yourself from something that's quintessentially like so fun together? And but yeah, after like that set happened, that's when people like kept asking for the famous like KYRUH Witchcraft B2B. And they get weirder, and like that's kind of where the name now is. So they get weirder and more avant-garde every set. Like the set we did last night was, we were just doing there was all sorts of noises, there were all sorts of things happening, and so his girlfriend actually came up with the name.
Yeah, she came up with it. She was like, oh, what about like madness of two, madness of, and I was like, whoa. And then I like messaged you and you
I
were
was
like,
like, whoa!
whoa.
Because we were trying to think of a name, because like the B2B is kind of how many times can you put B2B on the flyer before it's actually a collaboration?
Yeah.
Because people reach out to me a lot to do B2Bs, maybe even you to do B2Bs. I'm like, it's not a B2B, it's an artistic collaboration at this point.
It's the whole thing.
It's a thing. And so I heard that, and then I was thinking, I just kept thinking of it, and I would think of like our nights and our shows together, and I was like, oh, madness last night was so good, and I'm like, oh, there it is again, there it is again. And so there's like a soft launch with it now, because we're still like booked under the B2B, because people really want like the KYRUH and Witchcraft name, and so we're like kind of incepting it into people. So we call our little tour dates like the madness of KYRUH and Witchcraft tour, and sort of like soft announcing like, these are the last 2 months, it's gonna be the KYRUH and Witchcraft B2B, and so by the fall, it's gonna be madness of.
I think it's catching on too. Like, I think it's catching on.
Yeah, and it's kind of cute. Like, people are like posting videos of us now, and they're like, the madness of KYRUH. I was like, oh, you guys are using it?
Yeah.
You're using it? Okay.
Yeah, I think it fits you two perfectly. To be totally honest, like it's really great.
Go Katie, shout out
Yeah,
Katie.
Katie.
She's watching this.
Yeah, so unfortunately we gotta move on. We just gotta keep going. But I want to move into some talk about the community. And as we know already, techno and house music has really come out of Black and queer spaces, and has been co-opted very heavily by white artists, by straight artists, and by male artists. And I just first wanted to talk about, I guess, how you guys think that specifically white and straight artists can sort of uphold that history in their DJing practice or production practice as a white or straight or cis person.
So I'm gonna start with like production, and I guess maybe like the way people talk about it. I think is really important. I think it's really important to acknowledge the history too. Like, I mean, you don't need to be like constantly like reminding everyone, but I think it's very obvious when someone hasn't done their research. And I think techno in the house and electro is when someone's making it, there's just such a rich history. And it's just so, I don't even know how to really explain it. It's so obvious when someone clearly hasn't done the research. They clearly don't know exactly where it came from. You can hear it in the sounds, you can hear it in the music. You can hear it in the way they talk about the music and the way that they DJ. I think first and foremost, it's really important for people to come into this knowing their history and knowing their
Especially if you're white.
yes, especially if you're like white cis male, like, and you are deciding to come into like these kinds of spaces. Do your research, know your history, like, and have some like respect on all of that. And for people who are around you, but be mindful of your space, the space that you're taking up, the space that you're in. I think that's super important.
And if I could add,
Yeah, please do.
if you're, a DJ who doesn't identify with these marginalized communities, I think you need to buy your music. I mean, everybody is hopefully, well, I'm not gonna say what people should do.
Yeah.
But the easiest way to sort of pay homage to the Black and brown and queer artists that you're playing out is to buy the music and to not be legally downloaded. I think that's just a way to put money in those artists' pockets. And I just wanted to add that. Sorry to interrupt. I just think that's like the best way to pay homage, not ripping it offline.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Yeah, what's another question that you had? Like how they
I guess, well, yeah, I'm also curious about specifically DJing. And I guess you kind of answered that in saying buy your tracks.
yeah, it's important.
I also think be mindful of the tracks you're playing out. Like I personally, this is just personal preference. I don't like when white DJs play tracks that have the N-word in it.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like digital blackface. Yeah.
I personally don't like that. I can't speak for every person of color, but or even just using terms like that could be I know for example in our LGBTQIA plus communities there's a reappropriation of terms that were once derogatory. That's not for you to touch if you're not part of this community. That's not for you to decide that you're gonna sort of get heated.
Yeah.
To reappropriate. And so I think that you can be mindful specifically of the music you're playing out, being more aware of what what vocals and what's being said in your tracks, I think is also really important as any DJ, but specifically, cis white male. I think what you said too, I think it's how you carry yourself, because DJing doesn't stop on the decks. You're curating the party before, you're curating the party after, you're networking after, and I think how you talk about the music and how you carry yourself is really important, and being mindful of the space you're taking up. Specifically even this Pride weekend, it's just if you are not LGBTQIA+, be aware of that. You don't have to be the loudest voice in the room. You don't have to be the loudest voice in the room. You don't have to be the biggest dancer on the dance floor. If it's Pride weekend and people are trying to sort of get away from all the crazy shit that's happening outside. And I think there's just general awareness. I mean, I know that's really vague, but there needs to be a level of thoughtfulness that you need to have if you want to be in spaces that weren't created by you, and not only not created by you, but like you said, co-opted, misused, taken, stolen from, and yeah.
Really good answers. Thank you guys.
It is kind of hard to see what that would look like. I guess it looks different for different people, putting that into practice. But I also feel it shouldn't be that hard, right? If you really respect what you're doing, and you really love the music, and you really are inspired by these different communities, it shouldn't be that hard for you to see what you need to do, or in some cases what you don't need to do.
Yeah.
I feel if you really do respect that, then it shouldn't be hard.
Oh, if I could piggyback off of that, something I've learned about allyship, especially working with youth and populations that I don't pertain to, if you're an ally, you're gonna be put in uncomfortable situations. You're gonna mess up. you're gonna say something wrong by accident, you might play a track that maybe you didn't like hit right, you know, you're gonna be uncomfortable. That's part of being an ally. And I think being comfortable with that uncomfortableness and handling it with grace and not handling it with disgrace or you know, kind of contempt or anger, you know, or making people uncomfortable. And like, oh, no, that's not what I mean. Justifying. You're gonna be uncomfortable. You're gonna fuck up. Handle it with grace. You know.
Absolutely, yeah. So to sort of move on to venues, and I want to talk about how, you know, how promoters and venues separately and individually can kind of work to make spaces better for Black people, for women, for Black women, in terms of, you know, just first of all, just respect, making sure that all of the employees are respectful of these DJs, making sure that there's enough representation in clubs of women, enough representation of women and Black people and queer people, and just make those spaces safer in general.
Well, we were talking a little bit before, so I think everything we're gonna say is also through this lens of like coming from a really big city like New York City. So like, you know, take I think like what we're saying with like what could apply to like your city or like the places like you live and frequent. But I think, well, one thing I think an involved promoter is really nice. To check on your DJs, because, you know, like I've been in a situation like where I was supposed to DJ after like a man and he wouldn't like let me on the decks. Like he just wouldn't let me on at the same time, you know, and that like, and it helps to have like someone on your behalf, like sort of intervene in those things. So I think like a promoter or people who work at the venues who are just kind of helping with the lineup and making sure the DJs are good. I think being involved is really cool and really important. Some things, like you talked about like lineups, like there was unfortunately like Boston Nova Civic Club in New York, RIP, like it burned down, but it should be opening again. But like they had like a clause where it's just like you can't have like all white male lineups here, and you can't have what was it? It was like, oh no, I think it was like you can't have all male and you can't have all white. Like those were the two things, and the lineups need to be sort of diverse. Like, yeah, I think that's like really blunt language for it, but I think just making sure there are like venues with like clauses that say like the lineups need to be diverse, I think is really cool and like opens the door and the opportunity. Like that club like opened the door. That was sort of the every DJ like in New York City, like that was the starter club. And I think it was because like there was such like diversity in not only DJs but music. That's like the club that like, I don't know, everybody got to like, you got to really be yourself in that club, and everybody like, I miss it so much. So that club, it was so small, but it was the best club ever.
Go any day of the week, it's always popping.
Yeah, always popping. And but I also worked, so I said I was working at this club. I switched transitioning to working in nightlife. I work at this club called Nowadays. It's like a really big, I want to say predominantly house, but the genre is really kind of fun. They do techno, but it's very kind of like more fun and happy and light. But they kind of traverse genre. But it's really cool. Like I'm a safety monitor there, and like there's no other club that I know that has this position. And so that means like a few things. We do things like we help with ticketing, and we're kind of like the vibe curators. So we help with ticketing, and so like when we're ticketing people, a bouncer is not allowed to throw anybody out. The safety monitors tell the security who they can throw out. The safety monitors are all like musicians, artists, ravers, part of the community, people who are seen in the community all the time. So we do ticketing, and like in ticketing, you are kind of vetting the line. If someone's like too drunk, someone's like cursing at you, someone just like, you're not like deciding off their dress code, but if the vibe is like not culturally aware, I can decide not to have them in the club. So that's one thing. Second thing is every person that goes inside this club, there's a little vestibule, and we take like groups of people before they come in the club. And the safety monitor talks to them, and you tell them the rules of the club. And the rules are there's no violence, there's no homophobia, there's no transphobia allowed, racism, sexism, no unconsensual touch, no creepy staring. You know, that's something that a lot of people, especially like where people get, none of that's allowed in our club. And you can be thrown, and you will be thrown out, like first offense, like you'll be thrown out. I mean, it's not like, not the cops, but if people are complaining about someone in the club, like we take that seriously and they're gone. We also have like a no phones in the dance floor policy. So like people who are loving the way that they're loving, it's not being filmed unconsensually, and like you can get thrown out and take, of course, like mistakes happen and people are generally nice because, you know, you check in the time and stuff, but like, you know, specifically like photos and videos, like that's not allowed on the dance floor, not the whole club, the dance floor specifically. And also there are safety monitors on the dance floor at all the time. We wear like these red wristbands, like no one else is really allowed to wear like glow in the dark stuff on the dance floor, really. And so we have these like red wristbands and we hang out on the dance floor. And if something happens, we're right there. They're not like they're not talking to like a bouncer, because sometimes I think people could feel afraid or not feel validated when they're talking to a bouncer. They're like coming up to someone who looks like me or who looks like them and telling them what's their issue. Also, not only their issue, like if someone's overdosing, if someone, you know, is feeling sick, like we have like Advil on tap, we have all these things. Like there was just like this particularly one night recently, I've never like seen this scenario. I mean, I've only been working there like 2 or 3 months, but like there was just this night where there was just so many men that like so many women who complained of being groped. Just this one night, I guess the crowd the DJ brought. And that's also, okay, sorry, last thing. And that's also why it's really important to be like a big DJ in and outside of the club, because you bring a specific crowd. Like you bring a specific crowd, like based off of your music, based off of your vibe, people come based off of you. And so I think it's really important to like understand and be aware of who you are, because like your crowd comes. And so there was like a DJ who brought a shitty crowd, like, you know, and there was a lot of complaints all night. And yeah, I think those are some things that like, I love the nowadays like stat safety model. A lot of other clubs do it in this soft way. They don't like give the rules, but that's like the rules of all clubs in a lot of ways. It's just like not given to you. And we have to get verbal yeses, especially if there's cis white men in groups of them in that vestibule. We have to get verbal yeses from them. And if they're not paying attention or they're goofing off, like they don't have to come in. Like, and it's not like forever. It's just like tonight's your night. Like come back tomorrow night or next weekend. You know?
Come back when you're acting better.
I was just gonna say, yeah, act right.
Right. All right, well, I think that was kind of all the questions that I had for you guys, unless there's anything else you want to add.
Excited for the night.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really hoping, you know, through this, the people here, the people that watch this YouTube video can sort of take some of the things that you said and how people can improve in the scene, artists, promoters, venues, and sort of try to implement some of these things. Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you so
thank
much.
you. Thank you guys so much.